Right. Okay. Stuff. So let's get cracking with what we have to do today. We last finished off with having completed theme 1 of learning unit 3. Okay, and there we were focusing on your application systems, isn't it? Right? Now, in your second theme, we're now looking at your knowledge capture systems, okay? And you start to see that, like I was saying the last time, there's quite a bit of repetition here, okay? But they're just emphasizing on different focuses, but going over the same topics, okay? So here they say, explain the main roles and responsibilities that come into play during the knowledge capture, discovery, and application and management, okay? But here what I saw is that the primary focus is just your knowledge capture systems, okay? So again, we know capture systems, knowledge capture systems, they are focused on supporting the process of eliciting explicit and tacit knowledge, okay? That resides in people, artifacts within the organization or in organizational entities, okay? And then the information obviously exists either outside or within the organization or the firm in question, okay? And then we also rely on mechanisms and technology when speaking of your knowledge capture systems, okay? With particular focus on support, externalization, and internalization, okay? And then you'll see that there is a huge use of stories when it comes to knowledge capture systems, which we will see a lot of as we go on through this particular lecture, okay? And here they say storytelling is the mechanism by which early civilizations passed on their values and their wisdom from one generation to the next. I think if any of you happen to be Christian by any chance, you see a lot of that actually from the Bible, you know, with your Abrahams and so forth, so forth. A lot of these things were relayed via stories. Stories. Okay. Actually gave me a very different perspective on stories. Let me try to see if I can zoom in. Or maybe let's just do this. Let's do a slideshow from current slide just to make that bigger. Okay, so here on this slide, they're saying knowledge management mechanisms for capturing tacit knowledge using organizational stories. Okay, who remembers what tacit knowledge is? And please Google it, because I'm needing.
Isn't it knowledge you get from experience?
Knowledge you get from experience, knowledge that you see from observation, right? Observing who? Your experts, people who've been doing this particular work, all right? People who we regard as experts, okay? Right, so here they say the importance of using metaphors and stories as a mechanism of capturing and transferring tacit knowledge, okay, is increasingly drawing the attention of organizations, okay? Stories are used in the organization for business planning in order to set the stage, okay? Right, why, maybe before we even go there, why do you think there's a huge emphasis on the use of stories? Why?
What is the question, sir?
Why do you think there's a huge emphasis on the use of stories in organizations? We could throw a whole lot of information at you, right? But it's easier to actually tell you a story, okay? Because people get invested in a story and then they want to understand, okay, These are the characters in the story. This is how the story began. We obviously then want to know, how does it end? What happened to the characters, for instance, okay? So with stories, it allows us to set the stage. It allows us to introduce dramatic conflict, okay? We manage to reach a resolution through stories, okay? So we're not just telling you a story, but we're actually conveying a message with a storyline, okay? I'm sure some of you may have watched certain movies and you can't help but feeling motivated after having watched that movie. Why? Because they've told you a story, but within that story, they've given you certain pieces of information or certain pieces of inspiration, okay? They've managed to generate excitement, okay? Because now maybe your eyes have been opened to certain opportunities or things that you never thought of or you never thought were possible for you, okay? And then commitment from all staff, okay? Again, I think that speaks to, people, allowing themselves to be captured by the story, because there's no, well, at least at first glance, there seems to be no angle per se, all right? Then encourages collaboration, okay? Reflects organizational norms, values, all right, and culture. And then ideal mechanism to capture tacit knowledge. Okay, when we tell you stories of what we did in the past, Mali, when we tell you of what we did in the past, due to certain situations, how we managed to deal with certain difficult clients, okay, that in sharing that knowledge, we are obviously sharing our experience, okay, through tacit knowledge, okay, therefore enabling you with how then you can go on to deal with certain situations. Now here they talk about Dave Snowden, okay, who was somebody who was a huge proponent in the telling of stories at IBM. How many of you know IBM or what that company is all about? Yes, it's computers focused, okay? They actually were the ones responsible for the huge computers before obviously we had the likes of Bill Gates and the likes of Steve Jobs, um, give us computers that each of us could have in a home. So obviously computers would take up a whole room like such as this. And that would obviously then only be accessible to certain companies, not even all companies, okay? So this guy was a huge proponent in obviously storytelling within IBM, okay? And here they're basically saying he identified the following guidelines for organizational storytelling. So they should stimulate natural telling and writing of stories, okay? Stories must be rooted in anecdotal material reflective of the community in question. So we must be able to relate to this. If we cannot relate to this, then that becomes a problem, because then how do we connect to the story being told? Okay, then stories should not represent idealized behavior. Okay, so sometimes we focus on ideals so much so that we forget about reality, okay? An organizational program to support storytelling should not be dependent on external experts for its sustenance, okay? So it should be able to be related to people who are within the organization, all right, experts within the organization, so that they can see that, oh, this is something that can be practiced or executed within our context, something that can be done or is done within our business as well. Organizational stories are about achieving a purpose, not entertainment, okay? at the end of the day, there is an objective to this storytelling, all right? And then here they're saying be cautious of overgeneralizing and forgetting the particulars, okay? What has worked in one organization may not necessarily work in others, all right? So it's not a one shoe fits all, okay? So take the time to actually assess whether the story will actually work for this, is relevant for this organization. Adhere to the highest ethical standards and rules when sharing your stories, okay? So don't water down your principles, basically. Then steps to successful storytelling. Have a clear purpose. Okay, so some of these things are kind of being repeated. Identify an example of a successful change. All right, tell the truth. Okay, people can tell when you are bullshitting them. All right, so be sure to tell the truth. Say who, what, and when. Be particular, be specific, okay? So that people can connect the dots and see that, actually, this is something that I can do within my day-to-day work, or this can actually help, all right? Trim detail. Okay, now you have to be careful. You don't want to be over detailed because people also get lost when there's too much information being shared, okay? It becomes overwhelming and your mind just switches off. And then underscore the cost of failure, okay? And on a positive note, okay? This is why we know the end to certain movies, because we always want these stories to end on a positive note. It's uplifting, okay? And this is why sometimes we actually have praise for when they don't, because it's different from what we are accustomed to. And then invite the audience to dream. I think when it comes to storytelling, your audience needs to be central focus, okay? The story needs to be applicable to them. It should be relatable to them. It should make them feel some type of way. Does that make sense? If your audience does not feel anything as a result of the story being told, then it's very likely that that story is not appropriate for that particular audience and will not meet its objectives. Okay, so here now they're talking about 4 kinds of truth in an effective story. Okay, now here before we go there, we just have this individual. I don't know how you pronounce that. Phoel. How do you pronounce that? Foley? Is it Foley? At the beginning, before the 2006.
For a while.
For a while. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I just said name. I didn't say first name. Why are you guys killing me like this? Why? Huh? But anyway, this person emphasized it's also important how you say the story. Okay? There's some people who are just naturally gifted at sharing stories. Okay? I would think comedians, for me, are at the top of the list of people who are naturally gifted because it's how they share the story. Does that make sense? It's not just, and then this happened, and that happened, and then so and so died. There's a whole way in which they tell the story that obviously then captures the audience. Okay? Sometimes you even know the ending, but because the way in which they get you there, you're laughing before they even say it. Okay? So again, the emphasis there is how you say this story is critical. And then here they're saying, in this regard, stories should speak as one person to another. They should present the truth as one sees it and should seem spontaneous, but must be rehearsed, okay? And one should relive the story as one tells it. Remember I said, you must make your audience feel something, all right? If this is something that is outside of the realm of my environment or my experience, at least I should be able to see it as you share the story. Does that make sense? Okay. Right. Then here, the 4 kinds of truth in an effective story. Firstly, truth to the teller, okay, the person telling the story. Truth to the audience. The story must fulfill the listener's expectations by understanding what the listeners know about, meeting their emotional needs, and telling the story in an interactive fashion. Okay? So again, your audience must be your focus. Focus. And then truth to the moment. Since great storytellers prepare obsessively and never tell a story the same way twice. Okay? So again, this speaks to the whole point that we spoke on earlier, where it's never one shoe fits all. Okay? Right. That could be also as a result of, you told this last year. A lot has changed since last year. You need to obviously adapt and change it accordingly. Then truth to the mission. Since great storytellers are devoted to the cause, which is embodied in the story, capturing and expressing the values that she believes in and wants others to adopt as their own. So never forget the end goal of why you are sharing this particular story. Then considerations in a design of effective storytelling. Other important considerations, basically. Okay. Here now we're now reconnecting it with the purpose of this lecture, which is knowledge management, but specifically capturing and transferring tacit organizational knowledge. Remember, we're not just telling stories for the sake of telling stories. We're not at a camp and are sitting around a fire. Does that make sense? At the end of the day, we're doing this within our organizations with the purpose of capturing and transferring tacit knowledge. All right, knowledge from our experts. Remember, we just defined what tacit knowledge is all about. And then, secondly, identifying people in the organization willing to share how they learned from others and how to do their jobs. So within that audience, this story that I'm telling, I need to be identifying. This can help the tellers in the bank with how they address customers. Okay, so that story, I should have already identified who can benefit from it and how it's going to help them with the dealing of their work, all right, or improvement in their work. Then metaphors are a way to confront difficult organizational issues, okay? Sometimes, we use stories of certain incidents in order to capture what are the type of values that we should have as a society, right? And without saying whether we have good or bad values, the behavior already speaks to the values that we have. So you're addressing difficult things through metaphors and highlighting the values that we should have, all right, as opposed to the values that we have. So there, I'm just highlighting how the metaphors enable us to tackle very difficult issues. Then stories can only transfer knowledge if the listener is interested. Remember I said, and I've been saying, always have the audience in mind. If the audience is not interested, it's over before you begin, okay? So this is why sometimes we take the time to find out what's actually going on in the lives of you people. Because if we can relate to you, then we can use such examples within our content, and then obviously you'll be interested in our lecture. You have some very knowledgeable lecturers, for instance, but because of their failure to connect with their students, they fail to transfer the knowledge. So the moment your audience has lost interest, you have lost your audience. Okay. Then here, what are we looking at? The argument that storytelling supplements analytical thinking by enabling us to imagine new perspectives and new worlds. Okay? So here they're just speaking to how storytelling enables us to look at new perspectives and see things differently, basically. Okay, it ignites action in knowledge era organizations. It bridges the knowing doing gap. Okay, captures tacit knowledge that we've been speaking to quite a bit. All right, then to embody and transfer knowledge, to foster innovation, and it goes on and on and on and on. But the whole focus there again is it's telling you the different ways that storytelling enables us to see a new perspective and to see things differently. Okay, so that's it. Yes,
What it says for this one.
we don't have a test. We have 2 assignments, and then you've got your open book exam.
This was nice.
You thought she was like, sorry. Are you now telling him I told you so? Okay. So here now, they're just speaking to knowledge management mechanisms for capturing tacit knowledge using organizational story. In fact, they're just continuing. Here are methods used for eliciting anecdotes. Okay, so we have the spinning fish tales represent human tendencies to escalate or better the stories shared previously. Alternative histories, a fictional anecdotes which could have different turning points based, for example, on a particular project's outcome. Okay, then you have shifting character and content. Are fictional anecdotes where the characters may be shifted to study the new perspective of the story. Okay, then you've got indirect stories. Allow disclosing the story with respect to fictional characters so that any character similarities with the real life character are considered to be pure coincidence. And then you obviously have the 5th and final one. Metaphor provides a common reference for the group to a commonly known story, cartoon, or movie. Okay? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your theme 2, part 1. So here you can quickly see the key stuff that you need to know. I know it's a huge kind of disconnect from what we usually discuss. You can see there's a huge emphasis there on storytelling. So this, definitely pay attention to. I know we've obviously had these in the various slides that we've gone through, but here now, I advise that you really pay attention to it because this is going to let you know what is the key stuff that I need to know about storytelling in order to adequately answer questions in relation to this theme. And I'm thinking particularly from the perspective of when you guys do your open book. During the assignments, obviously you have time to actually research, look, and find. But remember, when you're doing your open book, you guys will need to know where to find the relevant content ASAP. Does that make sense? Otherwise, you will blink, and before you know it, they are going to tell you 10 minutes before you're done. Okay, so here now, and I think there's just 2 or 3 slides left from what I wanted us to cover today, in terms of new content at least. Knowledge concept maps, and here they're basically just speaking to the aim of concept maps, right, is to represent knowledge through concepts, all right? Key concepts enclosed in circles or boxes of the same type related via connecting lines. Okay, you can obviously think of a mind map in this regard. I really think it's pretty much the same thing. The only thing is that now, because we're talking from a knowledge perspective, we are calling it concept maps, okay? Here they're saying in the simplest form. A concept map contains just two concepts connected by a linking word to a single proposition. All right? That's all we're talking about here. More general, inclusive concepts are found at the top of the map, okay, with progressively more specific, less inclusive concepts arranged below. Can you already see? It's like we are actually literally talking about a mind map, okay? So, yeah, just looking at that from a knowledge perspective. And then I think we'll end off here. I think we'll actually include this into the next lecture. We'll end off here. Right. So I'll park the bus there. And remember what I wanted you guys to do. This is more. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. This is more for your session 2. Because I wanted you guys to quickly do these eyes, but I'm going to just share with you now so that in the second session we can just go over some of the concerns you guys raised. So if you go to more resources, and if you go to your ICE activities, you'll then find your learning unit. Oh, barely can see that. All right, so here you have your knowledge capture systems.
So how many items are we doing for?
We have 4 that are available for now. Remember, by the 6th of October, these things are gonna disappear. Hey? So you need to get it done as soon as possible. So I'm gonna give you probably another 2 more at the very least. Okay. But again, huh? Yes, again, it's to make sure that you get your eyes. Sure. It's to make sure that you get your eyes, isn't it? Because we want to make sure that 10% is in the bag before we start talking about anything else. Okay. So just so you have your best. And here you can see it's literally just 5 questions based off of what we obviously have covered thus far. So yeah, you guys can focus on that either